All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Esteemed colleagues, our USGs, all protocols duly observed. Thank you for being here at this 10th book talk series. Today we're diving into Animal Farm, a powerful novella by George Orwell that remains relevant today, even though it was first published in 1945. But before we begin, let me ask, how many of us have read the book or at least are familiar with its themes? How many of us? Okay, great. Anyway, so for those that are unfamiliar, Animal Farm is an allegorical tale set on a farm where the animals, tired of their oppressive human owner, rebel to create a society where all animals are equal. However, we see as the story progresses that the new leadership corrupts the ideas of equality, leading to a system just as oppressive as the one that they overthrew. The author wrote Animal Farm as a reflection of the events of Russian Revolution in 1917 and the rise of the totalitarian regimes, particularly under Stalin's rule in the Soviet Union. However, the themes of this book, corruption, power, manipulation of truth, social inequality, are timeless and resonates with us even today. As we discuss these themes, let us keep an open mind on how the author's insights might apply to our world today. We have structured our presentation in a way that will make the story more engaging. The flow of the book talk will be, first, we'll do a chapter by chapter summary so we can immerse you into the story of the book, followed by reflections of how this parallels our world today. And that will be followed by a discussion by Soup on some of the main themes of the book.
All right, thank you, Mara. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to the 10th book talk series. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to the 10th book talk series. And thank you to Knowledge Management and Dr. Jim and Rosalind for having us. So this is a regular book talk where we present this book and the audience listens to this book talk. It's a more interactive session, and we're aware that this book has been read by many. So even though it's our first time reading this book, we'd just like to share our fresh insights, and we'll open up the floor to discussions later on so that the audience can also share their insights. And those of you that haven't read the book, we'll do our best to take you through thoroughly enough for you to understand and resonate with the story and relate it to our world today.
All right, let's jump right in. So, chapter 1. So the novel opens with Mr. Jones. He's the owner of a farm called Manor Farm. So he's described in the book as being neglectful of his animals. He's a drunkard. And then one of the animals, described as an old wise boar, that's a pig, he calls for a meeting. He calls all the animals to the barn for a meeting because he had a dream. He had this vision. And it's particularly interesting how the animals were described to arrive at this meeting. So we have the dogs and the pigs that come first. They're described as clever. And then we have Clover. She's described as a motherly mare. That's a motherly horse. And we have Boxer next. Boxer is described as an enormous beast with the strength of 2 horses, unintelligent, reliable, and strong. Next, we have Molly. Molly is described as a pretty and foolish white horse. She's very vain. It is said in the book that as she was coming, she was, playing with her ribbons. She had a red ribbon in her hair, and then she wants everyone to notice her ribbon. And then Molly came with a mouthful of sugar. She was eating sugar, right? Next, we have Muriel, the goat. Thank you for that. So you guys can see the characters as we describe them. So next, we have Muriel. Muriel is described as a clever goat. And then we have Benjamin, the donkey. He's described as the oldest animal. He's very cynical. He never smiles, very sarcastic. One of his favorite saying was, God gave me a tail to chase flies, but I would rather have no tail and no flies. He was a very cynical animal. So Old Major delivers this rousing speech about the tyranny of humans and the need for animals to rebel. So he calls the animals to work together for a future that is free and equal. So now we'll have Old Mayor's speech. So we want you guys to hear the speech because it was a very exciting speech. It was inspirational and strategic to the next flow of events. Old Major.
This is for Old Major still. Now, comrades. I don't know. Now, comrades, what is the nature of life of ours? Let us face it. Our lives are miserable, laborious and short. We are born, we are given just so much food as we keep the breath in our bodies. And those of us that are capable of it are forced to work out the last atom of our strength. And the very instant our life business comes to an end, we are slaughtered with hideous cruelty. No animal in England knows the meaning of happiness or leisure. After it's a year old, no animal in England is free. This life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is a plain truth. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because the land of ours is so poor that we cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades. 1,000 times no. The soil of England is fertile. The climate is good. It's capable of affording food in abundance to an enormously greater number of animals that now inhabit it. This single farm of ours would support a dozen horses, 20 cows, hundreds of sheep, and all of them living in it would have comfort and dignity that's now almost beyond our imagining. Why then do we continue in this miserable condition? But nearly the whole of our produce of our labor is stolen by human beings. There, comrades, is the answer to our problems. It's summed up in a single word called man. Man is our only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork will be abolished forever. Man is the only creature that consumes without producing. He does not give milk. He does not lay eggs. He's too weak to pull the plow. He cannot even run fast enough to catch rabbits. Yet he's the Lord over all the animals. He sets them to work. He gives them back the bare minimum that prevents them from starving, and the rest he keeps to himself. Our labor tills the soil. Our dung fertilizes it, and yet there's no one of us that owns more than his bare skin. You cows I see before me, how many thousands of gallons of milk have you given up during this last year? And what has happened to that milk? We should be breeding up 30 cows. Every drop of it has gone through the throat of our enemies. And you hens, how many eggs have you laid in the last year? And how many of those eggs have hatched into chickens? The rest have gone to the markets to bring money for Jones and his men. And you, Clover, where are your four fowls you bore, who should have been your support and pleasure of your old age? Each was sold at a year old, and you will never see them again. In return for your poor commitments and the labor of your field, and the labor in the fields, what have you ever had except the bare rations and the store? And even the miserable life you live, I'm not allowed to reach the natural fan. For myself, I do not grumble, for I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm 12 years old and I've had over 400 children. Such is the natural life of a pig, but no animal escapes the cruel knife in the end. You young fuckers who are sitting in front of me, every one of you will scream your life out at the block within a year. Comrades, to that horror we must come. Cows, pigs, hens, sheep, everyone, even the horses and the dogs have no better fate. You boxer, the very day those great muscles of yours lose power, Jones will sell you to the knacker, who will cut your throat and boil you down in the fox hunts. As for the dogs, when you grow old and toothless, Jones will tie a brick on your necks and drown them in the nearest pond. It is not crystal clear. Then, comrades, that all the evils of this life of ours spring from the tyranny of human beings. Only get rid of man, and the produce of our labor would be our own. Almost overnight, we'll become rich and free. Now, comrades, what then must we do? Work night and day, body and soul, for the overthrow of the human race. That is my message to you, comrades. Rebellion. I do not know when rebellion will come. It might be in a week or in 100 years. But I know as surely as I see the straw beneath my feet, that sooner or later, justice will be done. Fix your eyes on that, comrades, throughout the short remainder of your lives. And above all, pass this message of mine to those who come after you, so that the future generations shall carry on the struggle until it's victorious. And remember, comrades, your resolution must never falter. No argument must lead you astray. Never listen to what I tell you that man and animals have a common interest. That the prosperity of one is the prosperity of others. It's all lies. Man serves the interest of no other creature except himself. And among us animals, let's be in perfect unity. Perfect comradeship in the struggle. All animals are enemies, and all men are enemies, and all animals are comrades. All men are enemies, and all animals are comrades.
Thank you very much, Bob. Beautiful speech by Old Major. In summary, our problem is man. We must overthrow man. This ban must belong to us. Man does not contribute anything anyway. He cannot catch chickens, he cannot catch rabbits, he cannot do anything. And then he's telling us we are doing all the work, and he's asking us, giving us bare minimums. We own nothing. He takes our kids, he takes our children. Basically, man is our enemy. All the habits of man are evil. 2 legs is good. No, 2 legs is the enemy. 4 legs and has wings is the friend. This was the vision. No animal shall kill another animal. All animals are equal. So that's the end of chapter 1. Basically, this chapter relates to the ongoing struggle against oppression and exploitation in the world today. Just as Old Major inspires the animals to fight for their liberation, various movements and groups advocate for justice, equality, and human rights. And the chapter serves as a reminder of the importance of recognizing oppression, in our daily lives, in the systems, in our countries, wherever. It just reminds us that, first of all, we need to be aware and we need to challenge oppressive systems.
So Old Major's speech reminds me, especially, of key pivotal speeches throughout history. We can take speeches from Nelson Mandela, that I Am Prepared to Die, and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, which is actually much similar to Old Major's speech. And these speeches fuel the spirit of revolution within the oppressed population.
Okay, so we move on. 3 days later, Old Major dies. Peacefully in his sleep, right? However, the ideas that he had planted, his vision, his dream, had sown a fresh outlook of life on the more intelligent animals. So if you remember, we described like the dogs and the pigs as the more intelligent animals, and then they took it upon themselves to be responsible for this rebellion. When it will happen, they didn't know. If it will actually happen, they weren't sure. However, we see the emergence of 3 pigs in particular that take leadership. We have Napoleon, Snowball, and Squealer, right? These animals were described as, Napoleon was described as a large, fierce-looking pig. He's not much of a talker, but he had a reputation of getting his way. Snowball, more vivacious, quicker in speech, and more inventive. Snowball, however, did not have the same depth of character as Napoleon. Then we have Squealer. Squealer was described as a brilliant talker, very persuasive. The animal said that he could even turn black to white. You can imagine. So these 3 animals, as we said, took leadership, and then they started to train the animals on the philosophy of animalism. This is what the dream, this is Old Major, this is what we're going to have when we own the band finally, and then we work for ourselves. However, like they had some resistance. Some of the animals had questions. It's like, if we chase Mr. Jones away, who will feed us? We will starve to death. There were other questions like, why should we care about a rebellion, really? Like, if we are going to die anyway, like, who cares? And then so some people said, if the rebellion is already destined to happen, like, why does it matter if we have to work for it? And then, as described in the book, the stupidest of all questions was from Molly. Molly asked, Would there be sugar after the rebellion? Will I be able to wear my ribbons, after the rebellion and things like that? And then we also have another character, Moses. Moses was described as a raven. uh, there was a part that we forgot to mention where Moses was close to the Mr. Jones, the owner of the farm. You could see him perching around their porch and things like that. And then Moses was spreading tales of paradise, about, if all animals die, don't worry, if you die, you're going to go to Sugar Candy Mountain. In this mountain, every day, Sunday, you don't have to work, there's food for everyone. And it's very important to note that the pigs weren't happy with this. They weren't happy with this whole story that the raven was talking about. And then fortunately, not planned, very unexpectedly, the rebellion then happened. So what happened was that Mr. Jones forgot to feed the animals for like 2 days. They were starving, and also his workers were very neglectful. The animals, they charged into the barn to get food for themselves. Mr. Jones comes, he tries to, flog them into obedience, and then the animals attacked him and chased him out of the farm. Wow, victory, right? Hooray, the animals were ecstatic, now they own the farm, the rebellion has happened, everybody is happy. So they established the 7 commandments. Remember, the pigs are in charge, so they kind of like summarize. Now it is said in the book that the pigs have perfected their reading and writing skills. Intelligent, they are good, they are ready to go. So these are the 7 commandments. Whatever goes upon 4 legs is an enemy. No, whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy, my bad. Whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. This wings was added because the birds were protesting. They have 2 legs. Like, how can you say 2 legs? We have 2 legs too. No animal shall wear clothes. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal shall kill another animal. All animals are equal. So basically, this chapter highlights the challenges and complexity in social change. When we have groups, even in small groups, even in classrooms, in estate groups, in small organizations, we have diverse motivations where we're busy talking about a revolution, somebody's asking about ribbons and sugar, where you have all these people with their own self-serving interests, and then they have the allure of escapism. How would I put it now? They're not focused, they're not getting focused. So basically this is what the chapter is talking about. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to note that when we go towards the execution of our ideals, we should really be careful not to stray away from the main vision or purpose that we have. So most of these movements get hijacked by individuals or groups that put their own interests ahead of the collective good. So I think that's something that we should really pay attention to.
Yeah, focus on. Okay. So now the animals have their newfound freedom. They've destroyed all traces of human. In fact, they broke into the manor house, burnt everything, even they had the harms, they buried the animal parts that were still in the house. And then they just walked around, admiring the place. They even painted the 7 commandments on the barn wall. And then the animals work hard and then they complete the harvest successfully. It was said in the book that, they could even do it better than when Mr. Jones was there, guarding them, the way that they would weed, the way they would collect. Everyone was happy. Now, those worthless humans are gone. There's plenty for everybody, right? So, and then it was said that everyone admired Boxer in particular. Remember Boxer? The strong horse that has the strength of 2 horses. But this time they said in Mr. Jones' era, he had the strength of 2 horses. Now, in their own era, he had the strength of 3 horses. Boxer was working so hard, like he was doing the work of half of the farm. So the rest of the animals were doing half. Boxer was doing the remaining half. And then we have like the leaders now. Snowball, he formed various committees to improve the farms. He had like the chicken committee, the cow committee, although they said the committees didn't really, weren't very productive, but we could tell that Snowball is somebody that was very inventive. And then we had Napoleon. Napoleon was just interested in educating the young, according to him, right? It was said in the book that one of the dogs, Jesse, gave birth to 9 children, and then Napoleon took these 9 puppies, and according to him, he needs to educate them. The older animals, they are fine. For these young ones, I want to be responsible for, promoting the future of animalism. And then we don't hear anything about these 9 puppies anymore. They are now in the care of Napoleon. So they also describe the level of literacy of each of the animals, which is also very important in this book. Because like we said, Snowball was in charge. The pigs generally were in charge of training them on reading and writing. So the dogs could read and write. The dogs could read, but they were only interested in reading the commandments. The goat, Muriel, she could read better than any dog. And then we have Old Benjamin. Old Benjamin could read and write as good as the dog and the pig, but Old Benjamin didn't care. He was so uninterested in anything. He's the cynical guy, remember. We have Clover. Clover, the motherly horse. She could read, but just the alphabet. She couldn't put words together. She knows A to Z, but that's it. And then we have Boxer, our strong, enormous beast. He could just only read A to D. Just A to D. That's it. And then Molly, the vain horse, she could only spell her name. She was just interested in the alphabet that spelled her name.
That was enough.
That was enough for Molly. So the sheep, the hens, the dogs were described as the stupidest of all the animals. They couldn't read or write. So the 7 commandments had to be condensed into a line, just a few words for them to remember. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And then we now begin to see the pigs start to take special privileges. They appointed themselves as directors and supervisors. Remember, they were working very hard in the farm, all the animals, they had to work together. But the pigs, they were just supervising, they just do this, you do this. They were very strategic. And then they moved into the harness room. So they leave the other animals and then they take the harness rooms for themselves because, they say, we need quiet time. We're the intelligent ones. We need quiet. And next, there was a harvest of apples. And then there was milk that went missing. And then the pig said, they come and they say, this apple and this milk, we have to keep it for ourselves because science proves that they contain ingredients that is good for our brain. Since we're the most intelligent ones, it is for your sake we drink this milk and eat this apple. If not, if we fail, Mr. Jones will come back. Of course, nobody wants Mr. Jones to be back. So they say, okay, it's fine. Take the milk, enjoy yourself. It's fine. You guys can have it. So this chapter portrays the initial euphoria and optimism that often accompanies revolutions. You can see that the animals are united and they are determined, and their determination symbolizes the hope and potential for, positive change. However, we can see like the early seeds of problems where now the pigs are beginning to take, special, privileges for themselves. They're setting aside resources for themselves, and they have assume themselves as leaders, It's not official yet, but they are the ones telling everybody what to do, things like that.
So I think chapter 3 it just lets us know that there are problems that are arising in the farm, but these problems are kind of covered because of the excitement and of the initial stages of newfound freedom and independence.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think when you come out of a really traumatic situation, like little problems you don't really get to see.
Yeah.
So I think.
So now the news of the rebellion has spread. The animals are successful. In fact, Snowball and Napoleon, they are using pigeons to spread the story around to the neighboring farms. So 2 neighboring farms. We have the farm for what's the name of those farms? We had 2 farms.
Mr.
Pillington and Mr. Frederick. So they were farms, but these 2 farmers don't like each other, right? But anyway, the news of this success spread everywhere. And then, of course, Mr. Jones, nobody asked about Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is like, what is this craziness? I need to take my farm back. So Mr. Jones, with the help of the other farmers, attempt to take the farm, but of course he's defeated in what is described as the Battle of the Cowshed. So the animals display courage and unity, and they defend their territory, and then they kick this guy. You guys need to read the book because we're not describing it as well. And then something to note was that Snowball was the one that was the military strategist in this war, in this battle. He played a key role in their victory. In fact, I think he was the one that gave like the finishing kick to Mr. Jones or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the animals celebrate their victory and establish a a tradition of, commemorating this battle. Snowball and Boxer are then awarded Animal Hero First Class. This is very... So basically, this chapter reflects the contagious nature of revolutions and their impacts in our surrounding world. The animal's success in defending their farm inspires other animals to challenge their human oppressors. And this parallels in real world revolutions, and can inspire solidarity and resistance, across border. It also highlights that, sometimes with this revolution, physical violence, can happen. I don't know of how many resolutions that were, without bloodshed or without physical violence.
There aren't many that took over peacefully, but I think we can see that in this chapter, like the wave of independence, good news tends to travel fast. So you can see that the same happened in Africa in the late 1950s. Once Ghana gained independence, the news traveled fast. So in the following 2 to 3 years, almost half of Africa then gained their independence. So I think that's also influential and inspirational for others as well to just go forward and then fight for their freedom.
Yeah, okay, great. And then in the next chapter, they talk about Molly. Molly couldn't take it anymore, Remember Molly? Like, it was described in the book, like, when it was Mr. Jones' era, she used to get, she had her ribbons, she had sugar all the time whenever she wanted. Molly missed her comforts and then eventually runs away from the farm. Like I said, Molly couldn't take this life anymore, And then it was now said that Snowball and Napoleon could never agree on anything. So automatically, these two people, Snowball and Napoleon, have now become the de facto leaders. If Snowball says, let's plant barley, Napoleon will say, no, let's plant oats. If Snowball says, let's go up, Napoleon says, let's go down. They couldn't agree on anything. But often, as described in the book, Snowball was very eloquent. So he could win arguments, and the animals usually have this general assembly on Sundays where they're supposed to come and debate ideas like, oh, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. And it's usually at those meetings that these two leaders, are vocal. So it says that Snowball will win arguments with his beautiful speeches, but however, Napoleon was better at canvassing support for himself in between times. So basically, Napoleon was doing the underground campaigning. He was gathering people to his side. And it was said that he was most successful with the sheep. So what he did with the sheep, remember the sheep are very stupid. All they can say is 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So now the sheep will be seen disrupting meetings. Nobody is having a beautiful speech about how we're going to move forward in life. And then the sheep will just interrupt everything. All of them will start screaming, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So Snowball had a plan. Snowball wanted to build a windmill, which he believed will bring prosperity to the farm. It will heat their barns. They don't have to work 6 days a week anymore. Now they work 3 days. So he had a vision. He was a very innovative person. And then it will also reduce the need for labor and improve their lives. But Napoleon was like, what is this rubbish? What we need is food. We need food now. Let's just focus on food. That's it. However, Snowball's eloquence wins the animals' support. But Napoleon, remember those 9 puppies, right? That Napoleon was training for the future of animalism. So they were at this Sunday meeting as usual, and Snowball was, canvassing, he's talking, everybody's like, yeah, go Snowball. And then all of a sudden, the 9 dogs that now puppies are now fierce dogs come and they chase Snowball out of the meeting. And then we never hear of Snowball again. And then the animals noticed that, the dogs were now they came and they stood beside Napoleon, and they were wagging their tails as the dogs used to wag their tails to Mr. Jones. Okay. And then next, Napoleon cancels Sunday meeting. What Sunday meetings? Now, we don't have any meetings on Sunday anymore. I will form a committee of pigs, and then we will come and tell the rest of you what we're going to be doing for the week, you know? And then there were some animals that resisted. It's like, what is this? 4 pigs in particular said, what's going on here? This is not what we agreed. And then the dogs attacked them, you know? Anyone that tries to resist, Napoleon's dogs attack. So basically, this chapter introduces internal divisions and power struggles that can emerge after initial excitement of revolution fades. So Molly's deflection represents those who are unwilling to sacrifice personal comforts. So when we are going for a revolution, we're trying to move for social change, there are people that truly cannot be bothered. It's like, there's this saying in Nigeria, I cannot kill myself. It's like, don't involve me in this struggle, please. I can't. And then the growing conflict between Snowball and Napoleon foreshadows the rise of authoritarianism. Authoritarianism and the betrayal of the revolutionary ideas. Do you have any points on this one?
I think in this chapter we're able to see the use of propaganda and also the use of arms and violence against peaceful protest or even opposition, right? And we can also see that Napoleon is creating, I know he looks cute here, but really, the story is not like that. We can also see that Napoleon is creating a huge distance between these social classes and making sure that he puts himself really high at the top that's almost unreachable to the other animals.
So in the next chapter, remember Napoleon said the windmill was rubbish, you know? Rubbish, get out, we need food, we don't need windmill. And then after Napoleon takes charge now, he has expelled Snowball. Now he has his dogs, you can see them beside him. And then he comes back and he declares that, oh, now we're going to build the windmill, despite his previous opposition. And then we hear the character Squealer. Squealer comes and then he tells everyone like, no, it wasn't that he was really opposing the idea before. In fact, the idea was his idea. Squealer stole the idea from him initially. But, you know, he just wanted to use tactics to just chase Snowball out because Snowball or not Squealer. Let's say Snowball or Squealer.
No, you're right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So he's like, so Squealer comes and he's telling the animals that, you know, it was actually Napoleon's idea. Snowball is a criminal. He stole the idea from him, and so we just Napoleon is so wise. He had to use tactics to just chase Snowball out of the barn. And then he says that the animals toil tirelessly under his leadership. Their work is difficult and demanding. They even worked like slaves. However, they were happy. You know, after all, they're working for ourselves, not these thieving humans. You know, as long as we're working for ourselves, even if we work to death, it's fine. We're not giving anything to the humans, so it's okay. And then while they were building this windmill, they faced a shortage of materials. And then Napoleon comes and then he announces to the animals that, well, we need this material, we need like cement, we need this, we need that, so we are going to now engage in trade with humans. Humans? You know? He said, yes, we have to, engage with the neighboring farms. But then some animals were like, but we thought the commandment said humans are evil, like no relationship, no contact with the humans. He said, well, don't worry. I would even take the burden of that, I will be the one to transact with them myself. For you, I will do this. I will trade with these disgusting humans for you. And then we see that he starts to trade with the humans. And then all the pigs now move into the manor house. Remember, they left the house. They're like, animals don't live in houses, that was against the rule. But then now the pigs move into the house. They need somewhere quiet for their brain work. They are writing reports, they are writing memos. They can't be like outside, right, like the rest of you guys. Like, of course, if we fail, Mr. Jones will come back. And then the animals will be like, okay, no problem. And then Clover asks, but I thought we saw like in the commandment that animals shall not sleep in bed. So they go back to the commandment and then they see now that it has been updated. No animal shall sleep shall sleep in, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. So they said there are no sheets on this bed. In fact, what is even there in this bed? It's just like a normal band, It's just a normal band. There's nothing special. Sheets are the products of humans. So we remove the sheets and we just lie on the bed directly. So in this chapter demonstrates how revolutionary ideas can be corrupted by power and greed. So Napoleon's seizure of power and his use of force against the dissenters mirror the rise of dictatorships in human history. The animals' willingness to accept his explanation and work tirelessly despite their hardship reflects the ways in which propaganda and fear can be used to manipulate and control populations. The breaking of the commandments against trade foreshadows further betrayal of the revolutionary principles.
Honestly, for me in this chapter, he was just gaslighting me. Like the entire thing was. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay, so we move to the next chapter. Winter is harsh, food becomes scarce. However, Napoleon uses squalor to spread propaganda and conceal the truth about the food shortage from the outside world. So they don't have food, but we have Napoleon telling everybody that, oh, don't worry, there's food. And remember, they are now into trade with the humans, and they were using this intermediary. I think he was called Mr. Whymper. So when Mr. Whymper comes to the farm, they would fill the buckets with sand and then put some food on it. So it looks like there's food, so that Mr. Whymper can go and tell people that, it's not true that the animals are starving. Or I went there was food everywhere. And then he now starts to force the hens to surrender their eggs. They need to make more money, They need to make money. They need to finish the windmill that they are building. And then the eggs were like, this is murder. What do you mean? These are eggs that are about to be hatched, These are humans too, or animals too. And then, of course, he sends his dogs to them. No, did he send his dog to them? No, he didn't send his dog to them. What he did was he starved them. So the hens that didn't want to release their eggs, he starved them. And I think we lost about 9
9 or 10 chickens.
Yeah. So the animals, however, remain dedicated to the animal farm and they continue to believe in the ideals despite the growing hardship. After all, they're working for themselves, right? It doesn't matter. So Napoleon kills. Okay, so what happens is that everything on the farm starts to be blamed to Snowball. So it's like there's no water. Snowball caused it. There's no electricity. It was Snowball. Chicken is missing. Snowball. A ram died. Snowball. Snowball snuck in. Snowball is the one causing all these things. Snowball is the one causing all these problems. And then it was said that Napoleon then gathers all the animals, and then remember those 4 pigs that challenged him? He killed them. In fact, they even confessed that it was Snowball that made them do it. He kills them. Some chickens came and said, "Oh, we did this, Snowball." There was even a sheep that came and said he peed in the pool, but it was Snowball that told him to do.
I think he came in a dream even.
Snowball came in a dream and told him to do it. And then they were even fabricating stories, and then they were getting executed. So rumors of Snowball's continued sabotage and plotting against the animals create an atmosphere of fear and propaganda. Even Boxer was then confused. Boxer was like, but remember at the Battle of the Cowshed, when we chased Mr. Jones, I saw Snowball with my eyes. Snowball was fighting with us. And then Squealer came and said, what? We found secret documents that show that Snowball is working with Mr. Jones. And then, in fact, you saw Snowball. You cannot be serious. It was Napoleon that did that. What Snowball? It was Napoleon. I remember Squealer is so good. And then the animals were even confused. They're like, it's like,
did I see this?
Did I see this or not? Okay, but Boxer, if Napoleon says it, it must be right. So this chapter showcases the descent into totalitarian rule characterized by propaganda, manipulation, and violence. Napoleon's control over information and his use of scapegoats in parallels the tactics of authoritarian regimes throughout history. The forced confession and executions create an atmosphere of fear and paranoia, silencing any opposition. The chapter serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of critical thinking and dissent.
I think this chapter speaks for itself, honestly. I can't even add anything to that.
Okay, so now the next chapter. So Napoleon, now he uses a series of sage confessions and public execution to eliminate any potential opposition, and then he consolidates his power. Napoleon, even in the manor house, has moved into a special room for himself, and he's guarded by 2 dogs, you know. When he wants to eat, he even has someone that comes to taste the food now, because he doesn't want anyone to poison him, you know. Napoleon has to stay alive. All these enemies that Snowball has around, we have to be safe from them. The animals, traumatized by the violence, but they continue to work hard, finding solace in their belief of the animal farm and its principle. And then with all the killings going on, the animals said, but we thought that the commandment said, no animal shall kill any other animal. Clover was like, remember, Clover cannot read. She's like, but Muro the goats, can you read this commandment for us now? Like, because we thought this was what we discussed. And then now it says, no animal shall kill any other animal without cause. This is what is now on the barn wall. No animal to kill another animal without cause. And there was something that we forgot to mention. Old Major, at the beginning, had taught them a song. This song was very empowering about the Beast of England, how they are now in charge, and this song, even now that everything is so sad, they're working hard, they are even dying, so many of them are dying. So they try to sing this song. When they sing this song, they feel better about themselves. Then comes Squealer. This song is now banned. You guys cannot sing this Beast of England anymore. It was a song of revolution. Revolution is now complete. So please, enough of this, your Beast of... I think we missed this part. We would have, maybe highlighted the song. It's like, we don't want this song anymore. Revolution is over. Change, please. And then Napoleon's power and image are further glorified. So we hear in the book that Squealer will come to the animals and he'll be like, wow, Napoleon loves you guys with all his heart. Squealer will be saying this thing with tears in his eyes.
Crocodile tears.
All the things that Napoleon does for you. Napoleon is doing this for you. Napoleon is doing that for you. Napoleon, and then, now he's no longer Napoleon. He's now leader Napoleon. And then this was contagious. For me, this was the very confusing part, because we hear now that some of the animals will even say things like, under the guidance of our leader, Napoleon, I have laid 6 eggs in 5 days. Under the guidance of our leader, if not for Napoleon, how can I milk 3 buckets of milk? Then we start to hear this ridiculous thing. And at this point, Napoleon had a musician, or what would I call it? He had a pig that was dedicated to singing for him. And then this pig now curates this nice poem for Napoleon, which the Beast of England has now been replaced with. So you no longer sing Beast of England, blah, 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 we animals, blah, blah, blah. Now you sing our great leader, Napoleon. So now we can see this chapter. The chapter depicts the consolidation of Napoleon's power and the establishment of a full-fledged dictatorship. The revision of the commandments demonstrates malleability of ideology in the hands of those in power. The glorification of Napoleon and the suppression of dissenting voices solidify his control over the farms and the farm animals and the farm and its inhabitants.
I think what jumped out for me in this chapter was how the sheep and the chickens were coming forward and just confessing to things that they didn't even do, right? And I think, I know that we haven't really, I really haven't found a reason for why they would do that. But me personally, in my opinion, I think these depict the sacrifices to the revolution. So mostly in revolutions, we see that even though we deem them unnecessary, the rulers see that some sacrifices are necessary for them to just more consolidate their power and make sure that people understand that this is a serious business.
Yeah, so like they just even make up things, just to try to really tweak the narrative. So now we are in chapter 9. So this book has 10 chapters, so we're almost at the end.
Done.
So yeah. Remember Boxer, the loyal horse, the one with the strength of 3 horses combined. We didn't mention that, in fact, Boxer told a chicken to wake him up 1 hour before everybody because he wanted to start working even earlier than everyone. And then Boxer would not question anything. As long as Napoleon says it must be right. So Boxer had 2 sayings: I will work harder, and Napoleon is right. So it now says that Boxer continues to work tirelessly despite his declining health, driven by his unwavering faith in Napoleon until he collapses. So Boxer was working so hard, even on Sundays, on Mondays, every day. Boxer took no break because he wanted the revolution to succeed. He wanted the idea of their whole animalism, the success of the farm. So he would work and work and work and work. And then even though Clover told him, Boxer, you need to chill, like calm down, like relax. He said, no, I will work even harder. So now Boxer collapses. And then Napoleon sends him to a hospital. Squealer comes and says, Boxer will be taken to a 5-star veterinary doctor. We acknowledge Boxer's hard work. He works so hard. We see everything Boxer does. So we'll take him to the best hospital available. But in reality, Boxer is taken to the knackers to be slaughtered. So the animals work harder than ever, and the farm seems to progress, though the animals remain poor and hungry. Squealer uses statistics and propaganda to convince the animals that their lives are better than under Mr. Jones. Like, now, he just comes with all this stuff. So you're hungry. Like, the animals can clearly see that they are hungry. There's not enough food for everyone, right? And they can see that the pigs in the manor are living a very lavish life. They still have the milk. They still have all these luxuries that they're, getting fatter even.
Exactly.
But then Squealer will come like, our rice production is now 200%. Yam for this year, 500%. The barley and the oat, 1,000%. And then in their minds, they're like, what is this one saying? Like, we just want more food, What's all these numbers you're coming up with? But still, nobody says anything because, well, it's better now than in Mr. Jones' era, and they don't want Mr. Jones to come back. So the pigs continue to increase their privilege, reserving all the barley for themselves and enjoying a more luxurious lifestyle, while the other animals struggle. So remember, they had sent Boxer to the veterinary 5-star hospital. And then Squealer comes back and says, Boxer is dead, Boxer died, but he died peacefully. And then when he was dead, his last words were like, we should continue to work hard, we should continue believing in Napoleon and all these things. But meanwhile, Napoleon had sold Boxer to the knackers, and then he used the money to buy whiskey. You need to read this book. This chapter was especially, I think it's book came from school.
This was a really sad chapter for me, honestly, because I think throughout the book, I think Boxer is one of those characters where it's really heart touching. I know it's a cartoon. I know I sound ridiculous, but please read it so that you guys can understand how I felt.
Yeah, so Boxer's tragic fate symbolizes the exploitation and disposability of those who serve the state blindly. The banning of the Beast of England and the replacement of the revolutionary ideas with empty propaganda marked the complete transformation of Animal Farm into a full totalitarian state where the pigs rule supreme. So finally, our last chapter. So years pass, and the farm continues to operate under Napoleon's rule. Now we will see that Napoleon now has even built a school in the farm where his children, because pigs, they give birth to so many children. And then the pigs and the dogs are the privileged class. And then even they go to school, the pigs' kids even wear ribbons on their tails now. They go to this community school that was built on the back of the rest of the animals. But you know what? The other animals can't come to this school, and the pigs' kids can't really associate with the rest of the animals' kids. So it's like, you can. Yes. So now the rebellion is almost forgotten. You know, most of the animals, they are dead. Some of them are dead. Some of them are gone, and then they really cannot remember the original ideas of the rebellion anymore. And then the pigs become indistinguishable from humans. You know, now they are working on two legs. They are wearing clothes. Their wives are even wearing dresses. You can see them in Mrs. Jones' clothes. They are now like, they now own the house, full-fledged, acting like humans. You know, they are now engaging in trade and different social activities with other farm animals. And then the seventh commandment is totally replaced with one. So they've deleted the whole of the seven commandments. And the only thing that's written in the ban now is all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So the pigs invite neighboring farmers to a dinner party where they are celebrating, and then the animals are looking from the window, and they're like, it says they were looking from pig to man and from man to pig, and they're not able to distinguish who is who anymore, you know? And so that's how the book ends. And it says the pig's transformation into the very image of their former oppressors completes the cycle of oppression. The revised commandment highlights the hypocrisy and the emptiness of the pig's claims to equality. The ending serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of complacency and the need for constant vigilance against the abuse of power. So we've wrapped up the book, and like we said, the next will be, I hope you found the story interesting, so you guys can be able to engage with us with this reflection of the characters. So who are these characters, basically? I don't know, maybe before we start to describe each of the characters, maybe you guys can tell us the one that you resonate with the most, or the one that you have an idea of. But let me just do a quick introduction, or a quick run through. So we have Old Major. So Old Major represents revolutionary ideals of the initial like excitement of change seen in many social movements or grassroots campaigns. So Old Major is a visionary leader. He had a dream, like somebody had a dream again, Martin Luther King.
Yes, Martin Luther King.
And then we have Napoleon. Napoleon embodies authority. This word is a mouthful. Authoritarian. Thank you.
Yeah.
Similar to the leaders who consolidate power, Napoleon uses propaganda, he uses fear, and then scapegoating to control the animals. This theme is very familiar. Napoleons, I'm sure you can think of many Napoleons, where an example will be like, during politics, you have a contrary opinion, the police comes and picks you up from your house, things like that. Then we have Snowball. So Snowball symbolizes the sidelined intellectuals or reformers with political movement. Maybe if Snowball was still there, or if maybe Snowball and his innovative was allowed to run with his innovative ideas, maybe it would have been a success. Maybe Animal Farm would have been successful, but we will never know. And then we have Squealer. Squealer mirrors a modern day propaganda machinery, social media, news, fake news, according to Donald Trump. Public relations officials who control narratives. So today's squealers can be seen in institutions or media that selectively represent information or twist, change history, twist things to benefit their own, to justify controversial policies. So we have Boxer. Boxer represents working class, people who remain loyal and hardworking, even when mistreated in today's world. We can see this as essential workers during COVID-19. One particular case was, I think, during the Ebola, there was this particular doctor, she sacrificed herself, and she was with this Ebola virus victim, and then she later died, So we can use that as a real life mirror of Boxer. We have Clover. Clover is the conscious of society, seeing injustice but feeling powerless to act. So I don't know why Clover didn't do anything. Like why Clover allowed herself to be, because she knew something was wrong. She knew that, but she was just blinded by the idea that we have this idea, this revolution. Yeah, maybe they will change. Like maybe they will change. So let's just continue supporting them. Then we have Benjamin. Benjamin represents the skeptical observer in society. Remember, Benjamin is as intelligent as the pigs. But he doesn't care, he doesn't act, he doesn't care, he's very uninterested. So they say Benjamins are often seen in social media spaces critiquing systems but refraining from any active engagement. We have Molly. So Molly reflects those who prioritize personal comforts over collective ideas. Like I said, Molly, she's not about the sacrifice, she's not about the hard life. Please keep me out of this. I'm out, please. I am moving. In Nigeria, they say, Japa, I'm leaving this country for you guys and I'm moving abroad. Please don't involve me with this. And then we have the dogs that symbolize the collective arms of authority, such as police forces that are used to, shut people up or used to bully people and basically threaten them. We have Mr. Jones that symbolizes outdated or corrupt institutions that people eventually revolt against. And then we didn't really talk about Mr. Frederick and Mr. Pilkington, but also they were because they were the owners of the neighboring farms, and they represent like deceitful alliances in geopolitics. So they would support you when it favors them only. When they have something to gain from you, then they're your ally. If they have nothing to gain from you, they are your enemy. And then they don't even mind associating with your other enemies just to get their own for their own self-serving interest. Okay, so now I take over this book.
So I think maybe just before we go on to this, I don't know if the audience would like to share any character that resonated with them. I'm looking at you.
Or like your perspective of any of this character.
See themselves.
That could also be the case.
Yes.
Whatever resonates with them. No, but I'm looking at Mary because.
What should I? Sugar is sweet.
Oh. Oh my God.
Okay,
So basically, this book presents a very unfortunate but common view or outcome that is all too familiar for most of us. Oh,
So basically, it's
yes. Should we?
So basically, old major. When you read old major speech, it's a clear example of what happens today, especially in third world country. What has been said that third world country. I'll sample my country as an example. We have crude, we export crude, and at the end of the day, we get back just PMS. Everything that we can do, they just bring it down. And I remember in the early 90s, one of the toughest areas to peak in Nigeria is to be in the oil rig. But if you make a sample or if you make a research of what happens in the oil rig, the HST, that is the health, safety, and environmental hazards, are higher than even in other chemical institutions. However, people see it as a purchase of jobs. If you also look at where the oil is produced from or where they export from in the Niger Delta, that's where we have our public government from. The land the oil village, and they don't even get half of the dividend of what is being produced there. This is what old major was talking about. But however, we have a lot of old majors today in the society. People who will stand up and speak to revolution, people who will stand up and gather the crowd, very eloquent. They will pierce through your hearts with their words, but however, they will go missing. And if you look through this book, at the point old major was no more there,
He died.
in the next chapter, you will not find old major again.
Old major died.
He died.
Yeah.
Before his death. He was someone who championed the movement, but nothing happened. And that's again that in recent times, we can look at the animal farm is how people who would push this movement would be the one who would betray. So even before Animal Farm, if you look at under book of Julius Caesar, one of the series, the person who killed Julius Caesar was Brutus. And this is where Julius Caesar made a comment where he said, coward died many times before their death, but never only death once. Because he knew that, okay, this guy was going to kill him. But this guy was trying to fight the cause of him. But where did he turn around to kill him from? It's a great area that no one knows today. So it happens a lot of times, where we find ourselves producing, where we find ourselves being the source, but at the end of the day, we don't even get replenished. We only get more than half of what we're giving. So this is what I can reflect for this book in recent times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Well, thank you. So do we have anyone else that would like to reflect, or should we go on?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not directly about the book, but it also made reference to the mic.
Oh, the mic.
So I think this also, he was like, he overthrew. So if you look at the history of Liberia, the immigrant or descendant of immigrants, freed immigrants from US, were taken to Liberia. But so because they were like slaves there, when they go to Liberia, their behavior was like, okay, we left US, so they tried to adopt the system of US, the way the hats they wear, the clothing and all. So they tried to force the indigenous Liberians to also behave that way. But at some point, the revolt, that's the indigenous Liberians. So the guy that overthrew is called John Doe, right? So he became like the military president then, or I don't know, military ruler. But he also continued from the oppression that they left. So you can see it triggers from, the guys that were freed from US came to Liberia, tried to conquer the indigenous guys, and then those guys that also the indigenous Liberian that became the military ruler also tried to suppress the people. At some point he was murdered or killed or whatever. So because another rebel stood up and then he was murdered. So you can also see the reference to the book.
Yeah, so like the cyclical nature of the people that were oppressed now become
the oppressors themselves. Well, thank you so much for that reflection. I can see that admin is representing today. So I think this book presents a very unfortunate but common view or outcome that is all too familiar for most of us. And I think the abuse of power and corruption has become such a norm in some of our societies that there are even sayings that promote it. So I can say one saying in Amharic, for example, it says, "Sishomi albala sishari kotal," which literally translates to those who didn't eat when in power will regret it when they leave their position. Eat in this case means to take an unjust advantage of your position or your power. Right? And I feel like the pigs in the story play really well into the saying because soon after they came to power, they started taking advantage of their position, abusing their power, even moving into the house, drinking alcohol, doing all these things. So I'll share my insights with you, which fall under two themes, actually. So one of the themes would be politics, corruption, and abuse of power. Yeah, political corruption and abuse of power. All right, so I think I'll just go from what Joseph mentioned earlier about how colonizers are quite famous for enforcing their cultural language and their way of doing things on their colonies. And we relate that to the story by how the farmer, Mr. Jones, used instruments of oppression like the harness, the whips, and the lashes to impose his will on the animals, which were significantly thrown down the well and burnt right after the revolution to signify the end of the tyrannical rule of Mr. Jones. But at the end of the story, we see these instruments of oppression start to come back. But this time, these instruments come back at the hands of the pigs. So this is the ultimate betrayal for the animals in the story, to see their pigs, the comrades who fought with them, to turn around and then be the farmer that they fought to overthrow. So this echoes the story of some nations that fought to overthrow colonialism, only then to fall on a regime as oppressive and exploitative as the one that they overthrew. We can take the case of many nations, Liberia being the one that Joseph mentioned, that gained independence in the late 1950s and early 1960s, which quickly descended into chaos in the years following, leading to the rise of dictators and kleptocratic rulers. Despite the proclamation of independence, this government didn't intend to end the colonial social order. They just wanted to replace the colonizers, right? And their rule was riddled with economical mismanagement and widespread corruption. I think under this theme, there's also another one where we talk about politics, because this book is a political allegory. So we should mention that as well. So in the beginning of the book, right after Old Major's speech, we see that the pigs take charge and they take on this ideology. They embody it, right? And they even have a term that's called the animalism ideology. And they start to go around the farm and indoctrinate the other animals, preaching a better future where all animals are equal and their lives are much easier and better. I feel like this scenario mirrors the campaigning aspect of modern day politics, where our politicians tell us a vision of a better future with them in power, only for us to then end up in a similar or even worse situations than before they came to power. And as the story progresses, we see Napoleon consolidating power from Snowball and retaliating against those that tried to speak out. And the prime example that this book is actually based on is Joseph Stalin in the time of the Russian Revolution, who after Lenin's death eliminated rivals through purges, So I think these two examples fall perfectly under the political corruption and abuse of power theme, where we see people who have power tend to be corrupt, So there are things that we should actually do to make that better.
Okay, just to add on what Atum said. So basically what this book is telling us, it serves as a warning against the dangers of unchecked political power, instances of corruption, authoritarianism, and the erosion of democratic values in various countries today reflect the cautionary tale presented by this book. It highlights basically the importance of, accountability, transparency, and protection of civil liberties. So we'll go on to the next theme.
Sorry, just to add.
Okay.
You can also see where in the book where the pigs confidently they were so confident to come and say to other animals, we need the milk. We need the milk and
The apples.
because it's good for our brain, because we are white.
Science proves.
Science proves. And this is because it's clear the book also told us, like, for example, animals like the goats could only say alphabet A to...
No, the goat was actually smart, but Boxer.
It was Boxer.
They could only say alphabet A to D, and they're very good at chanting words, chanting variant and the cause.
The sheep.
But based on the fact that the book said to us, the pigs are well coordinated, you could see like they found their way to all this convinced everyone. But this is where the importance of education and critical thinking comes into play.
Bobby, you're jumping.
You're jumping.
Wait for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think even with something that ties to how politicians preach a better future with them in power, I think there was an example that you're supposed to give relating to how fuel prices were really high, and
Oh yeah. So that was an example I told Atum. So currently we have a leader, so I don't want to call names. When he so there was a certain regime when he was with the opposition, and so the fuel price, let's say the fuel price was 100 naira, and then the fuel price had increased to 120 naira. There was something that they called occupied. What was it called? Can you remember?
Occupied like
Occupy Nigeria. We were supposed to call the name. But anyway, so imagine if there was an increase by maybe like a very small percentage, but this person, he came out and then he's like, no, we cannot take this. We won't take this. How can fuel price be 120 now? We will not take it. So now this person is in power. Full price is like times 100x. He's now in power. So all those vision, all those ideas that he has, it's now silence. We don't hear anything. And then if you try to say something, you get picked up, So this also just marries this political corruption and abuse of power. When he was on the other side, it was all shiny ideas. When I come in, I will cut down the price of fuel to 60 naira. But now it's 1,600 naira. It's like times 100, but it's silent. So just to put back, I gave Ace the example and she remembered it.
Yeah.
Where we practice it.
So I think we have a saying that relates to that example, which is "Kabaro basod sizuti atanagar," which actually translates to a drum looks good when someone else is playing it, but it's quite confusing when you're the one holding it, right? So I think with that, I would just move on to the next theme, which is social inequality and exploitation. So in the book, we see as the story progresses, we start to see the emergence of classes in the farm, which is actually not even far in the story. The pigs, which are the educated elite, and the dogs, which are the smart ones, who were later used as weapons by Napoleon to consolidate power for himself. We start to see the exploitation of the farm resources soon after the pigs took power. The milk was solely dedicated to the pigs due to the heavy mental load it takes to run the farm. And then later the apples, and then they even needed to move into the farmer's house. They needed to wear the farmer's clothes. They needed to drink alcohol. So this shows us the creation of such classes, hierarchy, and the power distance between these classes gives room for exploitation. And this exploitation comes in different forms. It could be exploitation of resources, like the milk, apples, and the rations, or labor exploitation. Just as the pigs appointed themselves as the supervisors right around the beginning, right, and shifted their fair share of farm work over to the other animals, making them work for longer hours for less rations. And the pigs were able to get away with this not only because the animals were uneducated or couldn't stand up for themselves, but because the pigs were able to use different strategies, such as manipulation of ideals and fear tactics.
So in my opinion about this particular team, the first question I was asking was, why was it easy for them to be so exploited? Why was it okay for the pigs to say, we're doing all the brain work, we need to have all the food, we need to sleep on beds and everything, because the animals were working. They were the ones that were doing the actual physical work while the pigs were living in luxury. Why is it that they were able to manipulate them? Some of the animals, we could say, okay, maybe the importance of education, yes, which is very important, and critical thinking. I feel like the book should have ended at I think it was chapter 4, when they kept the milk and the apple for themselves. People would have just said, you know what? This was not what we agreed. Let's end this thing here. Now, why would you take milk? Why would you take the apples? What do you mean? Like, we are working hard too. If you're working with your brain, we're working with our hands. I feel like the book should have ended there. But I don't know. I really don't know. But maybe they were just vulnerable. Maybe it was just a blind loyalty. They were unable to think for themselves, critically think. And even though some were thinking, they didn't act. It's that old Benjamin was as intelligent as any pig. But what did old Benjamin do? Nothing. Nothing. He didn't do anything. He was criticizing everything, but he didn't do anything. We also had Clover, that also from the emotional side of things, she knew this was not right. She knew, but this is not how I remember this commandment. This is not how I remember this. I thought we said you shouldn't sleep in beds. But then she's like, okay, but, anyway, we have this vision. Let's just stay put. Let's just continue. Let's just push through. So I would say in this chapter, they were able to exploit the other animals because many of the animals were illiterate. And then also some of them didn't act. So there was the ones that were not aware, and then the ones that were aware and they didn't take any action, which is as bad. Yeah, so I think, Bob, this is where you come in our next team, education.
This is where the conditioning theory. If you look in education, in adult education, is what called the conditioning theory. This is where it comes into play. If you look at chapter 1, where Old Major gave the speech, considering the fact that this is just my imagination painting the scenario, considering the fact that Old Major is a pig, an old pig at that was 4 years old with 500 children. That was already a figure in front of other animals on the farm. You know? Number two, if you look at the fact that the pigs were presented as the ones who would always convince and confuse the rest of the animals all the time. So what this means is that at any point where they had their general assembly every Sunday, the pigs would be the ones to speak. The pigs would be the ones to bring points out. So the other animals were conditioned to listen to the pigs. So this is where the conditioning theory comes into play. And if we look at the recent times today, quote and unquote, people who call themselves the word power, what they've done is, as much as possible, they speak. You know, they package themselves so well, they speak and say the same thing year in, year out to a lot of people or to the rest of the world. And even generations yet unborn who take this as a norm, which is now what we call culture and way of life. So, and if you look at Old Major's last paragraph after his revolution, he said, and even the children that are yet unborn should know that we are fighting for a cause. We should not argue, we should not believe that man is for us or we are fighting for the same cause. Animals are what? Animals are
Comrades.
what?
Comrades.
Comrades.
Are comrades and
Man is the enemy.
man is the enemy. You know? So all of this kind of speech that comes with power, frequently, imagine they're having this every Sunday and the pigs will be the one to talk and convince people. The rest of the animals are conditioned to accept this reality of theirs. So that's number one. Then number two is, you could see like nobody, the animals were the ones, the other animals were the ones tilling the soil and doing the rest of the work, while the pigs felt like their own role to play was the brain. So after a long day of work, when you think the animals will have time to go and have critical thinking or even make research, there will not be time for that, so they will accept this on their faith. So this is what I can point out of this.
Thank you so much. So we don't have much time, so we're going to just breeze through the rest of the themes. Surveillance and suppression of dissent. So basically, how that mirrors today's world is where we see various political contexts where the government or powerful group utilizes, they use fear to censor things. They use fear to manipulate. They use fear to shut people up, and then they censor information. In some countries, they even ban some social media because they don't want certain things to be said. They are constantly monitoring the media, and if you say something or if you present an opinion that is contrary to what they want to present to the rest of the world or to the rest of the country, you get picked up, you know. And then there's also under this part, you have the idea of scapegoats. We can see how the pigs were using scapegoats. Like the 4 pigs that opposed them, they executed them publicly. So the idea of using so they have scapegoats. Then you like, okay, look at what they did to this person when this person had this opinion. Even though I don't agree with them, I have to keep quiet because I don't want this to happen to me. So this is how, like in today's world, they use the surveillance and suppression of, of dissent. And then another one we have is propaganda and control of information, manipulation of language. We see how Squilla was very good at this. The animals, Napoleon was basically changing history. So this brings up a question to me. It's like, what other kind of history? What else has been changed? You know, we see how we had the 7 commandments, and then the 7 commandments changed, and then it now became 1 commandment. How else have all these people in authority or all these powerful people changed things? How have they twisted history? How have they, made new stories? And then propaganda, how you see Squilla is coming to gaslight everyone to tell them that even what Boxer saw with his eyes wasn't true. How can you say you saw Snowball at the Battle of the Cowshed? No, that cannot be Snowball. It was Napoleon that fought. It was Napoleon that helped us win the battle. It was not, so even you're questioning even what you saw with your eyes. So this is another example of propaganda. And I can imagine that we can think about how this is so like how it relates to today's world, like how these things are happening even tomorrow, and to think that this book was written in 1945 is so amazing, because it's still so relevant today. And then we have the importance of education and critical thinking. Maybe if the animals were more educated, maybe if they had access to the same information that the pigs had, maybe they would have made better decisions. Maybe they would have questioned the pigs, like, what are you guys talking about? Like I said, maybe the book would have ended in chapter 4, where the pigs started taking milk and apples for themselves. But because of their low intelligence, or not all of them were not intelligent, like I said earlier, some of them were intelligent, but they didn't act. So it's one thing to be intelligent, and it's another thing to take action when you see an oppressive system. So you're as good as the person that is even illiterate if you see something wrong and then you keep quiet, right? So I feel like the pigs so we have here the animals' lack of education and critical thinking skills made them vulnerable to the pig manipulation. And this underscores the importance of education, media literacy, and critical thinking in today's world, empowering individuals to analyze information, question things, and make informed decisions. So we're supposed to be able to make informed decisions for yourself. So everything that you see on the media, everything that you see posted somewhere, or the narratives that they tell us, for instance, I know that when we had the whole colonialism in Africa, most of our histories were taken away, And I used to ask, before all this thing, how did we used to communicate? If we were so illiterate, how did we used to communicate? How did we used to do our things? But you can see now that, so they've taken our story and giving us a new story, right? For instance, where I'm from, I'm an Igbo girl. We're very traditional where I'm from, but there's no way to learn this tradition. There's nowhere, because you go to school, primary school for 6 years, nursery school for another 6 years, but there's nothing that is being taught about who we were before we had this colonialism. It's gone. And so it's very important for us to educate ourselves. It's very important for us to question narrative. It needs to make sense to you. So don't just say, oh, yeah, that's what they told me. Okay, I run with it. No, so we're able to, I don't want to talk. Okay, so this next slide.
So I think one of the reasons why the animals were also uneducated was even those that could read were not given access to read some of the books that the farmer had, which the pigs had access to. So to sum up, I'm just going to use this proverb that said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And quite literally, the story starts with a dream and mission of equality, fairness, and a better life for all animals of England and the manor farm. But as the story comes to an end, we see that the conditions in manor farm under Napoleon became far worse than the conditions under the time of the farmer. And I think the major contributor to the failure of achieving the animalism ideology and the dream of equality and freedom was the inability of the other animals to stand up for themselves that arose from lack of awareness and education. Mm-hmm. So this exposed them to exploitation by the pigs naturally. Mm-hmm. So I think this book also most importantly highlights the importance of not just education, but a balanced and inclusive education, right? Mm-hmm. Which is accessible to all segments of the community, because you can see that the books of the farmer were only accessible to the pigs and not the rest of the animals. So, and here at the OSC, not only do we recognize and prioritize balanced and inclusive education, but we have programs such as the balanced and inclusive training that's currently taking place at the OSC Institute. And this is aimed at enabling educators of member states to incorporate BIE in their curriculums. Not only there, but we go further to also work towards making it accessible. Mm-hmm. So accessibility requires a fair distribution of educational resources, mm-hmm. to which the OSC has created platforms such as Graces to facilitate knowledge democratization, mm-hmm. Free and easy access to these educational resources for communities of the global south. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just to add to that, like it says in our slide, so Animal Farm warns of the dangers that arise when education is withheld from the masses, as it makes it easier for the small educated elite to dominate and control. So not just so we are just basically focusing on the education part, but also the small elite that have resources, power, control, they have masters for themselves. So the OSC's focus on education aligns with this lesson by recognizing that access to knowledge and education is crucial for creating societies where all voices are heard and power is more equitably distributed. Next slide. Okay, so thank you. So, Dr. J, we prepared that slide for you because we knew you were going to ask us about OSC's role. Okay, so now this is the interactive session. Like we said, we really wanted this to be very interactive. We wanted it to be a discussion. So I don't know if anyone has, any contributions at this point.
Sure. Wait. One sec.
Thanks.
So thank you very much. This was a very interesting conversation.
We're glad.
I think I'll start out with your question, Amara, about why they allowed themselves to be oppressed by the pigs, by Napoleon, etc. I would say it's because they were sold a dream. So they were found, there was a shared struggle. And so because they had that shared struggle, the pigs understood that and they used that to sell them a dream. So when you identify with something, it's very easy to be a blind follower to something that you fundamentally agree with, even though you don't agree with how it's been carried out. So once you're told, for example, if let's say the birds are always disturbing you and someone comes and says, oh, look, the birds are disturbing. Yes, the birds. So anyone can come in and start shooting the birds. You may not agree with that, but you will not oppose it because you fundamentally agree that the birds are a disturbance. That's just a silly example. But yeah, that's what I would answer.
That's another perspective.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Secondly, I would say I would like to put or just highlight Molly as a character. I think because she was perceived as a not so serious pig. Was she a pig?
She was a horse. She was a white horse.
Yeah. So because she was perceived as not so serious, she just had sugar and she liked her ribbons. And so when she was asked when they were discussing what the implications of the revolution would be, her question about sugar and ribbons were seen as not so intelligent. But I think it was one of the most interesting questions there, because the point of revolution is to create betterment of livelihood, betterment of life, etc. And so that's what she cared about. That's what good life was for her. It was sugar and nice ribbons. So when she asked about that, she was basically ignored. But when eventually the revolution was not going the way the result of revolution was not going the way she envisioned, she didn't get her sugar and she didn't get her ribbons. So she had to leave. So I think it speaks a lot about why people revolt and what the purpose of revolution is. Something that stood out was what the last straw was that led the animals to come together and revolt. They discussed it, but it took 2 days that Mr. Jones did not feed them for them to actually revolt.
Yeah.
I think it speaks a lot to how there is always one last straw. People will take as much as they can, but oppression can only last for so long. So of course it evolves over time, and it would increasingly and gradually be less bearable. But there's always a last straw, and there's only so much oppression that people can take. That's what I saw. Also,
you have more?
just 2. Okay. Sorry, I really like Animal Farm.
Okay,
just 2, and I'll make it very brief.
Okay.
With Clover and Boxer, with regards to just the idea of how we can also be complicit in our own oppression sometimes. And I think that speaks a lot to how Clover, Clover's character was perceived. Boxer as well. Yes, he believed in the fundamental ideals and all of that, but to a certain level, he was complicit, and we can see that a lot in our countries, in how we accept a lot of things that are not exactly, bad governance, how we accept oppression, how we accept police brutality. We talk about it for a day or two, and then we move on to the next thing. Lastly, I think the book ended with the theme on the erosion of identity. Formerly colonized nations, the founding mothers and fathers, they founded freedom, in a sense. But at some point, we sort of lost our identity. It talks about how the pigs now started wearing clothes. They started sleeping on the beds. They became human. They gave birth, those kids, as generations went on, they also sort of lost their identity, and it speaks a lot to what we are seeing happening in present day reality. Yes, that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But I have a question for you. I really like Molly. I relate to Molly, honestly. I really do. But don't you think that Molly was benefiting because she was admired. She was Mr. Jones' favorite. So this was a special privilege to only Molly. You see, right? So Molly wasn't thinking about the collective. Molly was thinking about herself. So that's why I'm just seeing it from a different perspective. Molly wasn't asking for sugar for everyone because everybody didn't get sugar. Molly was asking for sugar for herself. And this kind of goes against the whole idea of this revolution. And then keep in mind that sugar cannot be made by animals. Sugar is a human-made thing. Ribbon, it's a human-made thing. So it's like we're saying, oh, we're going against this oppressors, and then now you want the benefits that you are gaining from this oppression. So that's how I see Molly. Although I do agree that, to each his own. If the revolution is not working for you, that's the whole idea of equality and equity. Everyone's opinion matters if you want to go. But why I didn't agree with Molly and why I felt Molly was a distraction was because, like I said, it was her own self-serving interest. She was the only one getting ribbons. She was the only one getting sugar. So no one else was getting. If Molly was saying sugar for everyone, or maybe if it was something that could fall into what, because the animals, you remember they're animals, there's limitation to what they could do. What they wanted was the normal things, the things they could plant, their own produce, things like that. But Molly wanted processed food, and that just wasn't possible at that time. So I think that's just all I have. Thank you so much. That was a very great contribution.
Okay. I think I'll go next,
Yes.
if I may. Thank you for the presentation. I think just to piggyback off of what Yasali was mentioning with regards to how far you can stretch the people, I think there is a term in economics called elasticity of demand. And I'm trying to draw parallels here in terms of with elasticity of demand, basically what a producer or producers would do is to see how far they can stretch the price and see the reaction of customers. So for customers who don't care much about the price, if you want a product, you'll get it regardless of the price. But for customers who are sensitive to the price, at a certain point, it's breaking their back. They can't take it anymore. So I think the parallel here is that with elasticity, you try to stretch it and see how far. Does it bend or does it break? And if it breaks, then oh well. If it bends, then you keep putting it further. And I think you can see that from a political perspective. And I think that piggybacks off of what Yasali mentioned. The other part I was going to mention, I think earlier it was spoken about the revolutions and peaceful and non-peaceful revolutions. However, I will mention one of my favorite economists, Jean Tirole, where he mentions the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's not the first time I'm probably saying this. However, I think that's such an important aspect here because most times with revolutions, we need to look at three parts of it, which is the pre-revolution, when everything is calm, during the revolution, and after the revolution. Most times what you would observe, what you would notice is that the pre-part is when people are being starved, when people feel that their needs are not being met. And you can look at it, in the global south across many countries. You can look at it during the independence wave of the late 50s and early 60s. However, most times I think the failure is that During the revolution, it's like, okay, we're all speaking on one voice. You look at in Nigeria, I think in 2020 with the NSAS protests, everyone agrees that the police force or something is particularly wrong. But what happens after? So the first two parts, we tend to get them right. However, the third part, which is what I think in the book is the same part, is what happens after that. Is it a leaderless revolution? Is it a revolution with a group of leaders? This group of leaders, are they elected? Are they appointed? Are they selected? What's the criteria? Most times we don't think about it, which is natural, because if you're starved, you're likely not thinking about all these other aspects. You just want to change. But then what happens after the change? And that, I think, is a big reason why most revolutions across the world have failed time and time again. In some instances, leaders know that the best way to handle a revolution is to just be quiet. After a while, the noise dies out. No one speaks about it. You go again. And I think that ties into the propaganda aspect. Sometimes you can bring a propaganda machine which basically speaks out against the revolution, which says, oh, well, why are you guys complaining? There is A, there is B, there is C. What are you talking about? There is rice, there is food on the table. But what if it's not the right food? What if it's not nutritious food? What do we do? What if it's food that's going to kill us? What do we do? Do we just take it just because it's food on the table? So I think it's very important that we always think about it, regardless of what level a revolution is happening, we think about it in three parts. What happens afterwards? Are we able to lead? Do we need a transition government? Do we need a particular type of leader? Because you see it in many parts of the developing world and the world as a whole. It's not just about the developing world. You know, you look at, the American Revolution, or you look at revolutions across Africa. You look at Mandela, for example. I think that was mentioned with regards to apartheid. Okay, now, apartheid is over on paper. What next? Can we govern? Is Black South Africa better off today than it was during apartheid? That's an open question. So I think my aspect of this book, which I just want to talk about, is just that we should always look at revolutions, not just before, not just during, but also after. And after, we must look at long term. We must not just look at what can I get from it. I think you mentioned the Ethiopian saying that, you know, whilst you're in power, you must try to benefit or enjoy, because if you get out of power, then people would say, why didn't you benefit from it? But if we all have this mentality, how then do we push things forward? Because if we're thinking of what can I only benefit, it's just interest driven. So I think the book touches on a lot of chapters, but I just wanted to mention on this particular aspect and the third aspect of revolutions, which I think most times we miss out on. And in this case, the animals missed out on as well.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Oh, choo-choos.
No, I just want to remind you, during the communication, this book was banned in Ethiopia, and if you have that book, it was banned in Ethiopia, and if you have that book, and you reading that book, even you would go to jail. I don't know if Muslims, whoever, yes, yeah, it was true. And the story is exactly like during the communism, there was a song when we were kids, there was a song called Yala Minim Dem in Kanwayudam. I don't know if you know that song. They used to make us sing that song. I don't know, you weren't born, but that means we can, without bloodshed. Right after that, there was bloodshed. And just to remind you, it's like this book was banned in Ethiopia during the communist regime.
Yeah.
And I think partly also because this book invites people to actually really look at situations for what they are, and they incite the book incites some sort of like a revolutionary spirit. So I think that
would be it.
Why, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. For the first time, I would like to thank you for your presentation. It's just like a bedtime story. It was really nice and fun. What I know about this book is completely different from Sabla. This is one of the books that's considered as a literature book in university in Ethiopia. Me, myself, I have done a term paper on this book. So
Oh, so you read it in school?
yeah, yeah. So the point that I would like to raise are very few. Amarachi was saying that this book should be ended at chapter 4.
Yep.
But for me, though it's a fiction, it's the reality where the whole world is positioning its politics and social life. Each character represents the social community who are we have different thoughts throughout the world. Some are positioning ourselves as Moli, who always thinks that what's it in it for me, whatever criteria or situation we are in. There are lots of people who are thinking first for their own themselves. So it's a representation.
Yeah.
So there are lots of people like that one. So it's always in that way. So the other point that I would like to raise is so the commandments. The commandments are initially there were 7, and then they have changed it or adapted to
Because to the commandments,
their own
change commandments.
interests, and then they ended up in having just one commandment. And for the future, who knows how many commandments there are going to be, rolled out. So as the music changes, also the dance changes, all right? So this book is written in 1949.
1945
But
was
still,
published.
as you said, yeah, it's
Still
still
relevant.
working and it's moving in that way. And tomorrow or in the future, we don't know how many commandments there are going to be in place.
Okay.
So that's all what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harriet.
Yeah, just to add to what Yaseli and Frank, for revolution, there's one in this book. We could see that the animals, when Mr. Jones came back to say, okay, it's my farm and I need to take it back, the animals came together in unity, and there was one thing they had in common: nobody was scared of death, and they were able to chase Jones out today. But in reality today, when it comes to revolution, everyone is scared of death.
Everyone is Molly now.
Everyone is scared of death. And this would take me to NSAS. During the NSAS process of protesting, the country was times where each and every one of us lost people. It was a lot of times where brothers we had who were serving in the military who had to say, okay, I'm going to resign willingly. I'm in prison up to today. And also people were killed and everything stopped. Secondly, in this book, we could see that the pigs came out as the leader of the revolution. However, they were the ones who, at the end of the day, sold out. And in reality today, people who would like to revolt, or a group of people or sect of people who would like to revolt, will say, we have no leader, we have no representative, we're speaking together as a people. But at the end of the day, what happens is, you see the political class would look at one of these people and look at the smartest of them all and
Pick a scapegoat.
And appoint some. So today in Nigeria, we have a lot of people in the cabinet who are appointed who, during NSAS, they were champions of the protest. But today, they are appointed and they are serving in that same cabinet. Then when it comes to the amendment of the commandments, in recent times today, we have a lot of constitutional amendments, and amendment of quota system, amendment of eligibility criteria for allocation of resources, etc. So right now, the Nigerian constitution is the 1999 constitution as amended. And a lot of amendments will keep on happening to favor the political class. So this is the reality we face today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Conclusion?
Thank you, guys. You've really done justice to this book. Let's give another round of applause to these ladies.